Good evening, this is Goldie, aka the talking head in the secure location. It's Wednesday, October 6th, 2010. Remember, most importantly, I rant so you don't have to. By the way, the email alert I send out each week has the transcript from the prior week's rant, if that's an easier way for you to deal with my rant. I have a guest in town, one of my sponsors, and I believe he will be very silent tonight. By the way, if you feel sick and watch this rant, it will not make you feel better. Let me summarize what I'll be talking about today. I will talk about education in a response to an email from a fan. I'll talk about a lot of messages that are out there right now. Union spending in the election, Fox's Republican slant, England's cutting back on its welfare state, the Rutgers suicide due to the camera on the computer being turned on, and false charges against the ACLU by the Christian right. I will also talk about the rare earth metal recycling effort in Japan for profit. So I watched a Bill Maher the other day on the suggestion of a friend, and it was okay. I think Jon Stewart does comedic politics better, and I think Maher does a pretty good job, although he rambles. And sometimes it's actually not funny, mainly due to the guests just droning on. However, he brought up a point about the N-word that I will revisit. As you know, I've spoken that South Park tries to get me to say the N-word by putting it inside two sets of quotation marks. Remember the episodes about Randy, one of the kids' fathers going on Wheel of Fortune and mistakenly thinking that a person who bothers you is the N-word, not nagger, which is the correct answer. He becomes the N-word guy, but they actually say the word on the show. The point is that they want me, Goldie, to say the N-word. Bill Maher falls into the trap by putting the N-word inside of one set of quotation marks. He's referring to a politician's email, I believe. Excuse me. And he actually says the N-word a couple of times. I find it offensive no matter the number of quotation marks you put it in. Bill, I've got to ask, why would you say it? Wednesday, October 6th on Fox, two messages. One story was laughingly that the presidential seal fell off during one of Obama's speeches. Ha 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 ha. So funny. And in the same 5-minute span, there was a story about a survey that Fox did that showed 67% of Democrats want Hillary Clinton to be the VP candidate in 2012 with Obama. 2012 with Obama. Why would you do a survey about that right now? Kind of interesting. Additionally, there was an op-ed by Krugman in the New York Times in the past few days that pointed out that at least two of the candidates for president for Republicans, Huckabee and Palin, have actual shows on Fox, versus the famous old movie Citizen Kane that showed a powerful newspaper man just editorializing as to who he wanted for president. This shows Fox going a lot further, and I actually don't have a cure for it. I don't want to see Democratic presidential candidates having shows on MSNBC. That network's bad enough as it is. I received an email from a friend about last week's rant. Goldie, caught some of tonight's rant. Heard you mention my question. So are you saying people who care for the elderly, teachers, people who clean schools and office buildings, yes, janitors, are not performing essential jobs? If these jobs are important, then shouldn't people be paid a living wage to do them? You say if they don't like it, they should do something else. But A, this is not possible for everyone, either because of their situation or because of what is available. And B, if everyone took this advice, no one would do these essential jobs. The fact is, these are some of the hardest working people in our society, doing much more valuable work than many overpaid CEOs. Because our system does not adequately provide for people performing these essential jobs and inefficiently overpays others, it's necessary to redistribute some of the wealth and provide some services to these working people, and do it with an attitude of appreciation for an important job well done. Government wealth redistribution is an inefficient and problematic way to address the problem, but our system is so ineffective at giving people a way to make a living for their service that something has to be done about it. Got a better idea? Well, my friend is misconstruing what I was talking about. I was not commenting on how we should redistribute wealth or tax policy. I was saying that for the issue of personal responsibility, if you're deciding to have children, you need to commit to sacrificing everything to raise that child, to be one of the overpaid CEOs, since your child cannot make a living being a janitor. Nor will there be governmental services available for food, housing, or health care when your child is of age. And if your child ends up being a janitor, you, as a parent, cannot complain excuse me, that your child needs more. Personal responsibility. I had a friend comment on my theory that we should abolish public education last Saturday night. She was saying that she disagreed with the theory, which is exactly what I want and need to happen. I'm not running for office and never will, so I'm in a position to make these kind of radical statements so that we can get blood boiling and brains thinking. She and I walked through my theory. Why do we subsidize having children through the tax code, public education, student loans, AFDC, welfare, and housing assistance? I talked about the good old days when we needed hands for the farm and how those days are long gone. I talked about how it's clear from the arguments over the mosque not at ground zero, the Koran burning, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Patriot Act, the deletion of evolution and Islamic history in Texas textbooks, that we clearly did not educate the parents. So the public education system is broken. We need to look at it in a radical way. And the radical way is that we need to look at why do we subsidize the having of children. My friend responded that our society wants it that way. I asked, what are we preparing our kids for? A job at Walmart? Then we certainly don't want people to go to college and come out with a $120,000 debt and a poli-sci degree. So I slightly modified my theory, which is that 9 months from today, and 18 years, 9 months and 18 years from today, we're abolishing the public education system and all subsidies for people that are not yet pregnant. So that means if you get pregnant tonight, you are not going to get any help for your child following 18 years. You're not going to get any help for your child. You must provide food, clothing, and education for your child's life. Now make a decision to have a child, personal responsibility. Sorry, I misspoke that. My point is that we're going to say, we're not going to phase out or get rid of public education for people that are currently in the system. We are going to phase it out for anybody that's born tomorrow. So in 9 months from tomorrow. So if you're going to have a kid, you're going to have to figure out a way to educate and clothe that kid. Personal responsibility. I want to posit some questions that have been raised about the abolishing of public education. If we abolish public education, what would we actually have in terms of private schools? What would the curriculum look like? What would the voucher amount be? How would we watch the private schools? And would the current bureaucracy just be transferred to watching the private schools? Would unions still be there? What about the people that would choose not to send their kids to school? If we look at these questions, we can maybe dig a little deeper into what is wrong with the current scheme that is clearly broken and not working. Slight digression here. Excuse me. Water. These are 11 rules that Kent Summers gleaned from a Bill Gates Wednesday, May 22nd, 2010 speech. And I really like these, especially in this country where most people live under the phrase, I deserve, and don't have any concept of personal responsibility. Rule 1, and who's really telling this to kids? Life is not fair, get used to it. Rule 2, the world doesn't care about your self-esteem. The world will expect you to accomplish something before you feel good about yourself. Rule 3, you will not make $60,000 a year right out of high school. You won't be a vice president with a car phone until you earn both. Rule 4, if you think your teacher is tough, wait till you get a boss. Rule 5, flipping burgers is not beneath your dignity. Your grandparents had a different word for burger flipping. They called it opportunity. Rule 6, if you mess up, it's not your parents' fault, so don't whine about your mistakes. Learn from them. Rule 7, before you were born, your parents weren't as boring as they are now. They got that way from paying your bills, cleaning your clothes, and listening to you talk about how cool you thought you were. So before you save the rainforest from the parasites of your parents' generation, try delousing the closet in your own room. Rule 8, your school may have done away with winners and losers, but life has not. In some schools, they have abolished failing grades, and they'll give you as many times as you want to get the right answer. This doesn't bear the slightest resemblance to anything in real life. Rule 9, Life is not divided into semesters. You don't get summers off, and very few employers are interested in helping you find yourself. Do that on your own time. Rule 10, television is not real life. In real life, people actually have to leave the coffee shop and go to jobs. Rule 11, which was a rule I used, be nice to nerds. Chances are you'll end up working for one. I want to read something from the Literary Digest, June 30th, 1934. It was an article titled Social Insurance and the Human Equation. I'll read a portion of the article. I think it's pretty interesting. In a message to Congress, President Roosevelt has declared that the citizen is entitled to security against certain vicissitudes of a complex civilization. As understood by many nations and discussed at Geneva, these insurable risks to the individual include unemployment, temporary sickness, maternity, permanent invalidity, old age, and widowhood. Germany in 1889 inaugurated the first comprehensive scheme for a large country. 20 years later, Britain took the plunge. For 25 years, she has been amending her insurance by successive acts of Parliament, and such amendment is proceeding now. Throughout the world, there have been developed schemes of insurance. Many of these schemes are of recent date. Some are voluntary, either in whole or in part, but the tendency is toward compulsion. An immediate program for the forthcoming Congress is specified by President Roosevelt. He mentions unemployment insurance and old age pensions. Such a message clearly proposes a new departure of momentous importance, no doubt. Okay, it goes through some stuff, and I'm going to go back to the end of this thing. It says worldwide discussion. In Britain, 12 million are insured against unemployment and 17 million against sickness, maternity, invalidity, and old age, whether for themselves or dependents. The United States, therefore, has to consider a scheme which, if comprehensive, would include, say, 50 million members. And of course, now it would be 300 million. The usual idea is that people should pay weekly contributions for an old age pension. For an obvious reason, it is impossible to start an immediate scheme along these lines. It would mean that nobody could receive a pension until he had made these payments, say over a period of 30 years, and that the entire benefit would be postponed. At the outset, pensions must be largely a gift from the community. This is cool. Over the conditions of this benefit, there has been worldwide discussion. Usually it is laid down that the recipient of the pension must be a national of the country in question, and that he must have resided there for a period of years. Sometimes there is an insistence on reputable character. Also, it's customary to apply a limit of income and property to eligibility for pensions, and the amount of the pension is determined according to the recipient's lack of other means. I guess they didn't listen to this article when they started Social Security. Invalidity means a state of health which prevents the earning of more than, say, a third of a living wage, or indeed any wage at all. Such persons are regarded in the light of old age pensioners. The United States, like every country, has to take into account the human equation. America may be expected to work out the methods characteristic of its own civic genius. Interestingly, this was at the start of Social Security. Let's see how Britain has fared since then. There was an article in the New York Times, October 1st, 2010, entitled, "Amid Austerity Plans, Britain Keeps Welfare for the Well-Off." In this article, it documented the extreme case of Britain, where everyone, no matter their income, gets various subsidies. There are universal benefits, and legislators are afraid of alienating middle-class voters. So I guess these middle-class voters have become used to the benefit and even bought properties based on the increased income from these government-borrowed funds. Everyone better wake up, because those subsidies are going away. My point about saying that we need to abolish public education is to understand that there's not going to be enough money for even what we call necessities, like public education, Social Security, and even health care. We are lucky that we have not gotten to the level of pure giveaways that occur in Britain using borrowed funds. Now, only 4 days after I wrote about that article, that paragraph that I just read, another article appeared in the New York Times, October 5th, 2010. The title of the article was, "In Sharp Change, Britain Will Eliminate Child Benefits for the Middle Class." I guess they read my mind. In the article, it was detailed that a law change is going to be introduced so that, starting in 2013, the child subsidy only would be eliminated for people who have an income of more than $70,000 per year. They expect a lot of protests, and I expect that heating allowances, free bus passes, and television licenses for the elderly will be the next items cut, depending on your income, for now. A friend asked, why do I want to get rid of the mortgage interest deduction, since she likes the idea of home ownership? I stated to her that her views are skewed because she lives in a very expensive area with a very expensive house, and that we have mutual friends who have been emasculated by their experiences in outlying houses that don't increase in price, and these people could not sell their houses. We as a society, because of the declining standard of living, need our people to be more flexible. I mean, how many people have told the ex-auto workers in Detroit to pack up and move? How painful is it to them that they have paid into a mortgage for 20 years and are upside down and can't sell and can't move without killing their credit, making it almost impossible to even rent a place in Dallas or San Antonio, where there are jobs? This is related from the opposite side, from a story in the New York Times on October 1st, 2010, titled, "Document Flaws Lead to Turmoil on Foreclosures." The article focused on two specific lenders, both of which were bailed out with taxpayer funds. Such funds are also called a commons by me. The lenders were GMAC and Chase. The article detailed irregularities in the loan documentation and foreclosure documentation that makes some of the loans unforeclosable. By the way, that's malpractice by the attorneys that prepared those. Plaintiffs' lawyers discovered the discrepancies. In the October 5th, 2010 Austin American-Statesman, there was a story that made me gag. State urges halt to all foreclosure activities. Attorney General says state may be at risk of paperwork flaws that have prompted similar pauses everywhere. I am seriously sickened. In the 1930s, there were moratoriums instituted in various states, eventually found constitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court, where foreclosures or enforcement actions by lenders were halted for various periods of time. I've ranted in the past that the uncertainty created by this type of moratorium is incredible and leads to no one making loans, as happened in the 1930s. Why would our Attorney General do this? Let the borrowers do this. Do not waste taxpayer funds on this type of thing. I know of one person in Connecticut who stayed in a house with a $2 million mortgage, and he has not made a payment in 24 months. My God, let the homeowners use personal responsibility. And if they want to fight a foreclosure after not paying for 8, 10, or 12 months, let them do it with their own money versus our money. Abbott, shut your fat mouth on this. There was an article in the October 5th, 2010 New York Times entitled, "Cities in Debt Turn to States, Adding Strain." Turns out that as you start at the city level, they're mostly turning to states and the feds to balance their ballooning budgets. And states are budget deficits, and states are turning to the feds. Pennsylvania has 20 cities in trouble. Michigan has 37 in trouble. New Jersey has 7. Illinois, Rhode Island, and California have 1. Everyone's in trouble, and the solution is always borrow more. By the way, in the Great Depression, one state, Arkansas, actually declared bankruptcy, allowing it to wipe out its debts. Ouch for municipal bonds. In California, Orange County was unable to get out from under all of its debts in a federal bankruptcy, and Vallejo is still struggling to emerge from bankruptcy court after 2 years. This is current. No one seems to acknowledge the size of the problem. It's not just the federal debt that matters, but also the states' and cities' debts. I have to go through this right now. There are 3 possibilities for our future. 1, the Chinese call in the loans now. 2, the Chinese call in the loans later. Or 3, we're treated like Mexico or Russia, where they call in some of the loans, force the country affected into certain austerity measures, refi 80% of the debt, and keep their middle class happy. My friend in Connecticut refuses to watch Capitalism Hits the Fan, the documentary I wanted y'all to see. And the idea that we have hit a time where bulls and bears have watched rises and falls over the years as the line continued upward. The point is that we have hit the wall here with borrowing. Amazingly, it's not like the Weimar Republic with gigantic inflation. My friend in Connecticut has a child, so he's arguing, what about the computer? What about the cell phone? What about the smartphone? What about alternative energy? He has a son and is looking for the nuclear fusion lottery ticket. And that's no way to go through life, son. It's one of Garrett Hardin's American myths of American exceptionalism. He asked me, why don't I build a bomb shelter? Well, if you own real estate and think about selling it, you are effectively building a bomb shelter. A friend today also brought up the point that the Chinese will never call in the loans. What about if it's not in China's hands? What about when the total debt gets to 100 trillion? Just pick a number. There is a number. At some point it stops. At some point the house of cards falls down. At some point very hard decisions by us, the world's biggest debtor, will have to be made. I'd like to start now making those decisions. All right. Here we go again. And let's look at the message in this article detailing unions spending a lot of money for Harry Reid's Senate race against Sharon Angle. The story certainly intimates what is good for Harry Reid is good for unions, which I guess is good for us. How can that be? Have we talked about nothing on this show? This specifically shows the reason for fixing the structural regulatory defect of this group. Happens to be a union, not a corporation, being able to donate as much as they can raise. If Harry Reid wins, does he take their calls? In the New York Times, October 3rd, 2010, the title is Nurses Union Plans Ad Against Angle by Ian Lovett. The largest union of registered nurses in the country will begin a $200,000 advertising campaign on Monday aimed at defeating Sharon Angle, the Republican challenger to Senator Harry Reid of Nevada, the majority leader. Union leaders describe the race as their top priority in the midterm elections, and the advertising campaign is the largest ever expenditure on a political race by the union. Excuse me. National Nurses United, officials said. The campaign will include television commercials that portray Ms. Angle as bumbling and extremist, as well as internet banner advertisements and direct mail. The 4 15-second commercials play on Ms. Angle's name, declaring her the wrong Angle for Nevada. One advertisement juxtaposes the image of a house sliding off a cliff, calling it a bad angle, with video of Ms. Angle speaking, calling that a worse angle. Now that's some funny stuff, I gotta say. As your U.S. Senator, I'm not in the business of creating jobs, Ms. Angle is heard saying in the advertisement. Other commercials use Ms. Angle's comments about privatizing Medicare and Social Security, as well as getting rid of the Education Department. I guess I have to support her, huh? The campaign is the latest in a string of attack ads in what has become a neck-and-neck race that pits the highest-ranking Senate Democrat against a candidate backed by Tea Party advocates. Mr. Reid's advertisements repeatedly call Ms. Angle just too extreme. Well, one of Ms. Angle's commercials calls Mr. Reid, who opposes Arizona's controversial immigration law, the best friend illegals ever had. Third-party groups have also spent heavily on advertising for the race, including American Crossroads, a group with ties to Karl Rove, which has hammered Mr. Reid on the airwaves. National Nurses United, which was formed last December when unions from several states joined forces, has supported Democratic candidates in other races across the country, including by demonstrating against Meg Whitman, the Republican candidate for governor in California. But Michael Leidy, director of public policy for the union, called the Nevada Senate race the most important race nationally. What he meant to say is the most important race nationally for the unions. If a candidate like Sharon Angle with extreme positions on Medicare and Social Security is able to beat the Senate majority leader, that is a bad sign for public health and pensions, Mr. Leidy said. Excuse me. In response to the advertisements, Jared Agan, spokesman for the Angle campaign, said, Sharon believes that we must keep our promise to our seniors and prevent Harry Reid from raiding the Social Security funds as he's done before. All right, that's the end of the article. So the structural regulatory defect that plagues our commons of air, land, and water, which allows the regulated to write the regulations, rears its ugly head in the form of this union spending its money to get legislation, regulation, that it prefers, perhaps in the form of concessions at the time of the next contract negotiations. We must overturn Citizens United. Corporations and unions are not people. They are not entitled to free speech rights in the form of unlimited campaign contributions. I was watching Dennis Miller on O'Reilly tonight, and while not really knowing the quality of Sharon Angle, he said in all circumstances, Harry Reid is the problem and he must go. That is the defect in the system. It does not matter who is up there if unions and corporations can give unlimited sums to the next majority leader. Dennis Miller, you just proved that you know nothing about the deeper problem. Help me, Tea Party, help me. I'm begging you. So there's this guy who jumped off of the George Washington Bridge. He was going to college at Rutgers. Apparently some roommates streamed his gay encounter over the internet. He killed himself. Now they want to make it a hate crime. Let's talk again about irreparable harm of images being transmitted over the internet, as in my surveillance rants. When the police want to put up cameras at intersections or in high crime areas, they will not tell you the zoom, the radius, the height, the reach of the cameras, who will be monitoring them, for how long they will be monitored, whether they will be recorded, how long the recordings will be kept, who gets to see the recordings. Since they won't tell you any of these answers, it is impossible, I say again, impossible, to give an informed opinion as to whether these cameras should be installed. I've given examples of the West Virginia FBI workers who were caught viewing camera streams of high school girls changing into prom dresses at a private shopping mall. Now we add to that the story in the New York Times dated September 28, 2010 of the 22 FBI agents, including supervisors, that cheated on an open book anti-terrorism exam that tests the knowledge and importance of the new counterterrorism measures. These guys cheated, okay? So they don't even have any idea of the privacy implications which were included in those counterterrorism measures. And we further add to that the October 1st, 2010 story in the New York Times. British police offer apology to Muslims for spy cameras, where in Birmingham, England, police installed 200 closed-circuit television cameras and license plate recognition devices in predominantly Muslim areas and neighborhoods, specifically racial profiling. When I've spoken of the concept of irreparable harm, it was concerning the fact that negligently or intentionally, once images get out there on YouTube, they're out there forever. And if there's a surveillance image or video of your daughter showering, she is not going to get a job at a law firm. Irreparable harm. Or there's a surveillance video of a guy having sex with another guy in a dorm room. It gets out on the internet and the guy jumps off the George Washington Bridge and dies. Irreparable harm. Going for some images, some messages here. Tuesday, August 5th, 2010, Rush Limbaugh, love him, called Obama the little imam. He also said that Obama is ignorant in economic matters and that of course he should extend the Bush tax cuts, as only an idiot would think that the rich would not buy a flat screen. In the next sentence, he said that the rich are not spending because of uncertainty over the Bush tax cuts. And they're sitting on trillions of dollars but won't invest because of this administration. It's too bad that he doesn't use the correct reasoning, which is to hasten the day when the creditors call in the loans and we're forced to make the hard decisions about government services. Calling Obama the little imam certainly invites judicious, intelligent discourse. Rush, you are again a failure to your listeners. Thank God I, Goldie, have you people who are helping me and us come up with a few solutions, after, of course, discovering the actual problems, which is the key anyway. I received another email from a friend that commented on my Seeing the Change message from Nat Geo and Fox on the legalization of marijuana issue in California. He remains skeptical that the voters will approve it. I agree that it may not pass, but I was only pointing out that the message from Fox, which is from the drug companies, is not opposing the legalization, and believe me, opposition from Fox would not help the legalization effort. Although in today's morning show, Fox had on that the proposition is probably going to help out Democrats, as it will bring many Democrats to the polls. Their story was lighthearted. If they had really wanted to punish it, They would have said something like, Republican leaders are saying they need those good people of California to come out and vote both against the proposition because it will lead to crime, or some such crap, and to help out the Republican candidates. But they didn't, which is really curious. Maybe they're saving their money until very close to the election like they did in Nevada a few years ago. Here's a portion of the email from that friend in California. Marijuana legalization is not a sure thing at all. I never said that. As a matter of fact, while I'm for it, I feel that it will fail. Barely fail, but still. I have a more sinister belief that beyond the message put out by opponents of the proposition, people don't vote their conscience in these types of situations. They may feel that the proposition should pass, but the stigma weed having been illegal puts their mind in a bind. It's easy to say that weed should be legalized in a social conversation and much more difficult to vote that way. At any rate, I'm not confident the prop will succeed. He is misconstruing what is going on. People will vote how the media and Fox tell them to vote, whether it's against their self-interest or not. In fact, that doesn't matter. So the media message matters in this time of idiocracy more than what individual people think. And if Fox doesn't say it's wrong, the thing will pass. We'll keep watching, and I appreciate you watching too. By the way, on Fox on September 29th, 2010, there was a blurb about the cost of the VA benefits for the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, saying it's $800 billion. You will not hear a single person, Republican, Democrat, or Tea Party, or talk about that addition to our deficit. Also, a few years ago, the estimated total cost for the Iraq war, including those benefits, was $3 trillion. Sure happy we did that. I received an email, October 5th, 2010, from Jay Sekulow of the ACLJ. Remember the Christian lobbying organization? I have to read it to you. Dear John, damn it. Your commitment to freedom and America's foundational beliefs and traditions is under fire today as never before. In fact, there's a disturbing trend in America, an increasing assault on our constitutional freedoms by groups like the Freedom from Religious Foundation and American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Stand with the ACLJ as we fight to defend America's religious heritage for the sake of our future freedoms. Join our committee to protect America's religious heritage, and we will include you in the critical friend of the court briefs we file in cases defending our country's religious heritage. I want you to know the ACLJ is committed to protecting our religious heritage. He just really loves that phrase. Whether it's defending the Pledge of Allegiance and national motto, or going to court to stand up for National Day of Prayer, even safeguarding the time-honored tradition of prayer at presidential inaugurations. As you know, we recently went head-to-head with the atheist group, Freedom from Religion Foundation, in their legal challenge to America's religious heritage. A federal district judge in Madison, Wisconsin ruled in our favor, tossing out the lawsuit, which challenged the constitutionality of engravings of the national motto, "In God We Trust," and the Pledge of Allegiance at our nation's Capitol Visitor Center. But the legal assault on our religious heritage continues. I need to repeat that. The legal assault on our religious heritage continues. All right, continue with that email. The Freedom from Religion Foundation is not alone. We've seen a barrage of legal challenges by groups like the ACLU and others, trying to rewrite history, trying to remove any vestige of our faith and mention of God from the public arena. Whether it's defending the National Day of Prayer or displays like the long-standing cross in California's Mojave Desert, we remain dedicated to defending our religious heritage. The Freedom from Religion Foundation and the ACLU won't give up their assault on America's constitutional freedoms. And the ACLJ won't give up on protecting them. Okay, I'm going to read this probably like 5 times right now. I got to read this sentence again. The freedom, I'm not even going to read that part. The ACLU won't give up their assault on America's constitutional freedoms. I'm going to say it again. The ACLU won't give up their assault on America's constitutional freedoms. And the ACLJ won't give up on protecting them. These guys, I'm not going to say they're idiots. They're very smart. They're very good at raising money. The idiots are the people that believe what he is saying in this email. about the ACLU. Anybody who believes that the ACLU is not protecting your constitutional freedoms, I'm going to call you this. You are an idiot. You do not know what the ACLU is. Learn. Read the freaking first 10 amendments to the Constitution. All right, I'm going to continue on. As we prepare for new legal battles, join with us. Add your name to our committee to protect America's religious heritage, a committee that will be represented in future Friend of the Court briefs. I mean, what are they going to do, put stickers with it? What are they going to write your name? We file in some of the most critical cases of our time. I'm talking to my dog paralegal here. Again, this group is attacking the ACLU, the very group that absolutely defends the Christian right to pray in the sanctity of its churches. The only way they do this is with a straight face is to keep the individuals that donate to this organization in the dark about what the ACLU really does. That's the only way. I would love to see the list of the people that actually give money to this, and we would talk about the ACLU. That one just kills me. All right. I'm reading Vanity Fair's October 2010 article about Sarah Palin, and something amazing clicked. Just like Rick Perry's campaign for governor of Texas, not agreeing to debate his opponent Bill White, Sarah Palin has remained secretive and does most of her communicating through Twitter, Facebook, and speaking engagements that pay a lot of money. She does not do in-depth interviews anymore, and everything is carefully staged and scripted. For Perry, the contradictions in what he says and what happens are quite glaring, so he must avoid any on-the-record questions regarding them. For Sarah Palin, the contradictions, she's a Republican, not a member of the Tea Party, quitting the Alaska governorship midterm to make money, and of course the famous, what do you read question from Katie Couric, are overwhelming, so they must not be brought to light. What a pair they're going to make in 2012. They seem to have the same management team, perfect for this idiocracy. Going back to my talk about the 2 terabyte external backup drive that I bought for $104, remember I talked about the Garrett Hardin described CCPP game, commonized costs and privatized profits? I talked about how these companies do not pay the actual cost of disposing of their product. We, the taxpayers, do. And I said that the actual cost, including disposal, is probably closer to $300. This is of that external hard drive. I used the example of the disposal of antibiotics and how the drug companies wrote the regulations that allow for the flushing of these drugs down the toilets, and that we, the taxpayers, paid the price. I brought up that the city of Austin was doing a cleanup of pills to keep it out of the water system. An article in the New York Times, October 5th, 2010, showed how the old mining city of Kosaka in Japan is helping solve some of this commons cleanup problem. China has accelerated this with its embargo of rare earth metals to Japan over a high seas incident. This solitary problem is bringing to light the scarcity of these metals and creating whole new solutions, including the reopening and booming of old mining towns in Japan that are actually making a lot of money now recycling these rare earth metals from cell phones and computers. We've literally discovered gold in cell phones, said Tetsuzo Fuyushiba, a former land minister and now opposition party member, who visited here recently to survey Kosaka's recycling plant. Wow, a free market solution to a polluted commons problem. Thank you, China. That's all there is today. I want to thank our sponsors, all of which support this form of conversation, but not necessarily the content of the conversation. PianoByAngelo.com, Angelo Lambessis, who teaches and plays keyboards all over Austin. ZetaDesign.com for all of your decorative painting needs. You can make anything look like anything. AustinAreaPlumbing.com for all of your plumbing problems and redos. TicoAdventureLodge.com, TICO AdventureLodge.com, a small hotel in Samara, Costa Rica. CNC Surf School in Samara. There you go. CNCSurfSamara.webs.com. A great surf teaching experience. They got me up on a board. Let me put it to you that way. La Vela Latina, great sunset restaurant in Samara. Ambar Tequila at www.santospirits.com, an extremely smooth tequila. And for Monica and Quinn in Samara, check out their little hotel at www.villablancasamara.com. Thanks and God bless.